to move on, like we talk about confidence being one of the main ingredients. What is something that a candidate or a person or a player, when they're not confident, like what's the stench that comes off immediately when someone's not confident to you?
Well, I think that it depends, right? Because sometimes people are not confident, but they show up like if they are. That sometimes is
Exactly.
worse.
Yeah.
But we do see a lot of hesitancy, right? Like it's just sort of like this very, I don't make eye contact, I don't interact much, I just keep myself quiet. And I've seen this so much on people who has so much good skills and abilities, but they're not using them. They're not telling anybody. They're not speaking up. They're not showing up. Even like the presence, right? Like your body language. If I were sitting here like this, how would you feel about this interview? If I'm speaking very
Let me
softly,
check. Let me make sure I'm sitting up straight.
right? If I'm speaking very softly and very slowly, that makes a difference, right? But if I'm bringing energy and passion, and then that already makes you feel much more confident on my abilities. Even though I
Absolutely.
could be saying, who knows what here.
No, you're right. I completely agree. I've seen people tell great stories or operate in a place of confidence, and it might be false confidence, or they know it's false, and they're just like, "Well, I know I can get their attention from acting and standing like this and saying different things, stats, or whatever the case may be." But I don't know what I'm talking about. Like I've heard people say that, and yeah, intentionally sometimes. But it's like I'm not really sure in this, but I'm gonna bring all my confidence from this space over here, and it's
Yeah.
worked with some pretty big wigs.
Yeah, and
too.
I think, body psycho, like there are so many studies that have been conducted about this, right? Like your posture, like how are you showing up, like the way your shoulders, your face, like all of these things is fascinating. And it really, you have to remember that it's not only the confidence that you're having on yourself, but the confidence that you're instilling on others. You want people to feel confident on your abilities. So how are they perceiving you as well? Because it's a big component of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, that's a great point. Man, we're jumping into the working and selling in professional sports. So for our listeners that may not know, what are you responsible for as the VP of People and Strategy for the Pirates?
What am I not responsible for? No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so I actually oversee our business strategy specifically, and that's mostly thinking about where are we growing, what is our 10-year roadmap from a revenue perspective, from a cost containment, we have actually here at the Pirates, we have 5 strategic priorities that we focus on. And that was a long-term plan that we did when we do a lot of analysis. And so we focus on, growing revenue in the long term. You want to make sure that that's a very long-term type of thinking, and not just like, hey, we just want the cheap way out, right? You have to be very conscious of that. How do we actually care for our people? Culture is a big thing, right? Like, so we're very focused on that. How we provide the best experience in this ballpark. We have to, right? Like one piece is what you experience on the field with winning and losing. And the other thing is the things we can control, which is the experience when you're here. Do you have the most memorable moment when you come to this ballpark? So we're incredibly focused on that. And then we're also very focused on our operations efficient. You have to operate in a very efficient manner. And because we're a very, like, people don't realize this, but the Pirates is actually a small company, right? Like we only have 500 employees. We're not, Highmark has like 20,000, right? And so like when you think about that and you put it in perspective, we have to be very lean. We have to work very efficiently, and things move fast. So you have to keep going.
For sure.
And I actually think all sports teams are in the same boat, right? We might have 400, 500 employees the most. Like here in Pittsburgh, we have 160 or so. And so, yeah, that's it. So we're very focused. My job is very focused on whatever decisions we're making. They're holding those priorities at the heart of it. We're taking care of our fans because they're first and foremost. We're creating a player and people-centered culture that is really the anchor. And then I'm heavily focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, right? We have to diversify the game. We have a lot of diversity on the field. It's not manifesting in the other areas, and we have to do that, right? And then there is this ceiling, which we're seeing, where we have diversity at the bottom, and this is happening across, not just in sports, but then we're not moving them up, right? And so we have to make a concerted effort to build people with the ability to display those things and then show up at those levels as well. So I am incredibly focused on that right now.
That's a great point that you even bring up, even from the standpoint of the diversity aspect, whether it's backgrounds, nationalities, and different things of that nature. Because I mean, women working in leadership roles in professional sports isn't common.
No.
Like, so for you to make it to that level, would you attribute like your level of confidence in that focus on why you made it to that level?
I mean, absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what? For women, it's a double-edged sword.
I would agree.
Yes. Actually, there's a phenomenal article about how confidence is weaponized against women. Meaning, like, if we're too confident, then we are, bossy and we are bitchy or whatever. But if we're not,
Difficult, whatever.
yeah, but if we're not performing, it's because we're not confident enough. So we can win at this point, right? So at the end of the day, I always just tell people like that. I think the differentiation for me is not whether I'm confident or not, is that I'm not looking for validation. I am authentically myself. And so I'm going to show up as myself. And if this is your cup of tea, great. And if it isn't, great as well. I'm not going to change for anybody. And I always encourage that, because when you show authentically, that is confidence right there. Right? Because I don't have to pretend to be anybody else. And I think that the one reason why I've made it is it's exactly that, right? Because I'm doing this not for me. I'm doing this for the right reasons. I'm doing it for my people. And I'm focusing on the things that I can help and I can drive change for. And then I'm leaning on that really hard. And I'm going to keep, I'm going to be vocal about it. And I'm going to create this space for other women to do the same. And if I'm honest with you, Justin, I think that people of color in general face this exact same thing.
Very true.
If you're too
100%.
confident, then you're abrasive. You're the angry person, or you're whatever, right?
Yep.
And so I think for me, I am in a very good position where I can challenge those biases, and I am going to continue doing it.
Appreciate that work. And I mean, having a daughter, having little cousins that want to work in sports, like that are women, what advice would you have for any women that want to work in sports in the best way to, I guess, provide that initial value, right? Because I mean, we talk about getting into sports programs, sports organizations. So, I mean, a lot of times it's that, like, what value are you providing? You know what I mean? Sometimes if you're just coming in with only confidence and no value provided.
No, you have to have competence.
It might not work, right? You
too.
brought a lot of value to the table because you were coming from a strategy standpoint.
Yes.
But
Yes. Well, I think that, like, a couple of things I do often tell people, right? Like, as I said, like, it's confidence and competence. You need both. You can't just over-index in one and then the other. There has to be both. And like, to me, for example, I'm confident on my ability to figure things out. That's a competence, right? I'm a very good problem solver, incredibly good, and I can figure anything out. So that's, like, to me, like, a good thing. But I would say for any woman who wants to get in this field, I think the biggest thing is, like, you have to really go for it, right? You can't be afraid of working hard, doing your thing, and then speak up. I see so many women not even sitting on the table. They will take the back seat immediately. We have to change that. We have to change that. And we need allies, of course. But while they're catching up, we got to lead by example. Right? Like, sit
Absolutely.
on the table, speak up, raise your hand, have an opinion. We should have an opinion. And it might be the wrong one, but who cares? I learn more when I say the wrong thing than when I keep it to myself.
that's the confidence. You got to be able to, I mean, a lot of confidence to come up and speak. A lot of confidence is just for people to even see you be wrong, to be completely honest, and be okay with that. I think that's what I'm not trying to tell athletes coming through the process. Like, one of your critical advantages that you've been evaluated in front of your peers your whole life, right? Whether it's something that you actually care about or not, but whether you go over your film study and different things of that nature. So when you're transitioning out, a lot of people don't get that practice or that availability to, get criticized, and like that, you have thicker skin than most. So like, understanding that it's not going to be terrible if you're wrong. It won't be terrible if you make a mistake. It's not worse than getting beat for a touchdown in front of 100,000 people. I'll tell you that much.
Right.
I mean?
Right. But
So,
I do have to tell you, I think if I put myself when I started it, I think the one thing I always recommend to people, and this is just not women, but in general, and that was my rule.
Gotcha.
I always did more than what was asked of me. Always. If somebody asked me, hey, Nayli, can you run this report? I would run the report, analyze it, and provide insights, even though they never asked me to give insights. Right? But I did. Because if they're asking me for a report, they clearly want to get something out of it. So why would I just run the report? I'm going to make their life easier. I spend a ton of time connecting to people. What do they want? What do they care for? How do I make them more successful? My whole job all the time is, how do I make my boss more successful? It's not about me. How can I elevate him? How can I make sure, and my people now, right? Because I have my employees. So I'm very focused on maximizing my employees. But I do it in a way that aligns with what my boss wants. And if what my boss wants is not what I want, I should not be here.
That's true. I mean, because how can you work authentically in that space if that doesn't align?
You cannot. And that's when I always tell people, like, connect genuinely. You know, like I hear a lot of people saying you got to network. It's not about knowing a ton of people. It's about knowing people that would be your sponsor and your ally and will go to bat for you. My boss goes to bat for me, and I owe him everything. My previous boss, Deb Price Johnson, who works for Highmark, she went to bat for me. She gave me my first chance. Like, you need that people that sees your potential and would take you with them.
That's a lot, and that's a great insight and a point, because like you hear it all the time. Like, oh, you got to you got to network, you got to build your ecosystem and different things of that nature. But it's like, I believe there's merit-based networking, right? Like, there's a level, like your goal should not to just get someone's number or card, but like, how can you provide value to that person? Because in that moment, that's where the trust factor is kind of exchanged. To the point, like, okay, I trust this person to put my name on the line for this person, right? Like, I don't, not that they just send me a birthday text every once in a while, but it's like, oh, I know Nayli's going to do this, this, and this, and I'm going to show this, because I don't think, sometimes people don't recognize that when someone's handing it off, like they're protecting their own, you know, their credibility, their foresight, their insight onto you, or just how they evaluate different things. So just being on point and getting that trust factor first takes a level of authenticity of, what are the pain points? Where can I provide value? Like, being externally focused is what I'm trying to get to the point of, because that's how you make the true connections.
Yeah, and it has to be genuine, because people can smell that you just want to get something out of them, right? Like, they can't. Like, even when my boss eventually got the chief of staff role, I didn't know her. But I had created enough ripples that people knew, and at least the person who would solve your stuff if you need anything, right? When I showed up here to my interview, I actually showed up with that 7-page strategic plan that I built and I presented. They didn't ask me for that. That's going above and beyond. The other person, the other two people that were in the pipeline, they didn't bring that. I'm certain that's what got me the job. And I knew nothing about sports, but I was like, I do know strategy, so let me show you. This is the timeline that we would do. This is how long it would take. These are the results that we can get. Here's the analysis I did of the market, of where you are today and where I can take you.
That's awesome. That's super cool. That's like getting into the weeds a little bit, but just moving up, and just in sports, I feel like you have to create like a long lasting value. So like what I used to do at Penn State to move up to get to XFL, same way, got the job from showing the materials that I created from a strategy standpoint, a teaching, like building out a program. And it came from like an end of the year meeting with James Franklin and not getting a position that I wanted. And I was like upset in the end of the year review. And he was like, look, find all the gaps that you don't want and like create your own job and write it down. And in doing that, I started making all these different things. It's like, all right, this is what I want to do. And like, it gave purpose to even where I was at when I was disgruntled a little bit. And I used that to leverage different things when I was going to just show like, okay, there's value here, taking that step beyond what it is, like not just with your resume, but like, no, show your proof of your evidence of impact is what I like to say. You know what I mean? So it's like, you know, because we can all have the different skills and stuff, but like you have to have evidence of impact. Like if you impacted something, you'll have, there's going to be leftovers. Like there's going to be remnants of it. Like people might say something, but should be able to leave something that your name's on from a building constructional standpoint or whatever that may be on the back end from the business side. So like, I mean, that's impressive from that standpoint.
You have to, you got to try. It doesn't take much.
No, 100%. So
and
like,
they're not expecting it. So it's like a nice value add, you know?
Yeah. And like, you're in a very unique position because like you said, you're dealing with the president and like the chief of staff over at a Highmark. And so you're seeing executives and leaders operating, and whether it's their gaps that they might fall off and where you can provide that value. What are some, what the best practices have you seen from successful executives and leaders? Sometimes I don't like to mix them together because a leader might be different than an executive. You can be a leader anywhere, but Executive is the
Fair.
title. So
That's fair. We do hope all of the executives are leaders.
let's hope. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, so I think that the thing I see on, and Maxwell has this very nice layout of like leadership levels, like, position, permission, production, people development, and pinnacle, right? And you want to be at that pinnacle. And I think that the leaders that make it to pinnacle level, and those are far and few, right? Like think of the Nelson Mandelas of the world, right? I think that they do two things very well. I think that they honor people and they drive results. And it's not an or, right? They do both. And so I'm a big fan of Doug Conant. He was the CEO of Campbell Soup. I did a boot camp with him on leadership. And in his boot camp, it's probably one of the most amazing things that I've ever done. And every year he does a very big summit that is free. It's a whole week. That if you can go and look for it, it's worth it. He had Brené Brown last year, Susan Cain, just like phenomenal. And he has this thing that I love. He says, you have to be tough-minded on standards and tender-hearted with your people. And I absolutely adore that. And it's both. He says you have to embrace the power of and. It's love your people and drive the results that you want.
That's a little revolutionary to an extent, because I think sometimes people separate them, right?
Yes.
Where it's like, I need to drive results regardless of how the people feel. Like we heard the stories about Steve Jobs and like how he used to treat some employees, or just different leaders across the board, right? Where it's like, I mean, talk about it with coaches. Like sometimes people say about Nick Saban or Bill Belichick, like real tough guys. It's like, no, all they care about is winning. And I used to have to bring the concept of people's ideas, like these great coaches that you're talking about, they also have had great talent management. And with talent management, you have to care about the actual person. It can't just be about the end result, because like there's some massaging along the way, whether to get this player to perform that's a little bit of an outlier here or there, or maybe a problem child here or there. But it's a level of honoring your people, like, right? Honoring your people that do drive results at the same time. Because it's like, being hard with it, like, yeah, I mean, if someone's not driving results that you're honoring, I think it becomes a clear thing. Like maybe this isn't a fit for the culture, because that's almost like that framework is like a culture driving framework.
Yes,
right. Like
it
is. It puts things in place where people can kind of excel. You can see what falls off. I like that.
I'll tell you this. I think and if you hear his story, he says he wrote 30,000 handwritten thank you cards to his staff during his tenure, and they only had 20,000 people. So he would always write like handwritten letters, cards to his people to thank them for the work that they were doing.
Wow.
That's another level of really honoring and caring for people, right? And so is that level of appreciation. And I adore that, because you need both. And that's the reason why even my boss gave me human resources. I oversee human resources. And it's because when I was building all this strategy, I kept telling him, it doesn't matter that we have the best plans if you don't have the right people in the right places, right? Doing the right things. None of this matters.
None of it matters. I mean, especially coming from the strategy standpoint, where you're like building all this out on the wall, and it's like, now let's operate it as it trickles down. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, even from seeing the top performers from executives and things of that nature, how have you seen people that are fast risers in the industry? Like, is there a common trait that they have that you see where people's like, oh, he's moving up fast throughout the different positions?
I think that what they have, I think that they show a ton of value. They do more than they're asked for, right? They're like, I always call them my go-getters. They would really ask insightful questions. Sometimes because, oftentimes when we're at those lower levels, we think that we should just do whatever people tells me. Like, okay, you told me to do this, and I go and chase it down. And instead, I actually see that the people that rise fast is the people that has the ability to help you think differently. That I always say, can you elevate the thinking in the room? If you can elevate the thinking in the room, you're always adding value. And the only way you can elevate the thinking is asking questions, being curious, right? Instead of judgmental, just be curious. How can I help? What are the things that I could do? Why do we think that way? What are stuff that can make it better? That to me, like, I've seen it in every person that just like goes up fast is because they can ask good questions and they get things done.
At
You
the end of
have
the
to
day,
get things done.
I mean, everyone listening, you understand working in sports, there is a bottom line. Sometimes it's the score, sometimes it's the on the Excel sheet, but you have to get things done that are in your wheelhouse because you're trusted to get that done. And that's another reason or just the barrier of entry to work in sports, right? When I think to work in it, there's a level of stripping off a level of confidence. Like some people have to like really like to get this, you have to do X, Y, and Z. And then some people come in a little bit of an insecure space where it's like, all right, I just need to be happy to be here. Like I can get fired any chance. But to operate at the lower level with confidence isn't as easy as people may think, whether it's to speak up and ask questions or challenge, like, are we sure you want to do that way? Obviously, don't be obnoxious if you've never put any time in and just
Right.
questions to your people, right? Like there's levels to it. I'm not saying that,
Yes,
but having
yes.
that core confidence of what you can ask and what you can bring to the table to think differently, because everyone has their own perspective. Like, and that's one of the great advice I got from my dad going through just the process. He was just always, as a coach, he would say, make sure when someone rubs you wrong and if you don't like them, listen even more intently.
More attentively. Mm-hmm.
More intently, right? Because it's like you're all typically, I don't like this person. You just kind of cut off what they're saying,
Yes.
and a lot of times that's when all the nuggets are coming.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But
Well,
there's something
Justin,
there.
I would tell you this. I think that you're absolutely correct. I think that one of the things I see in a lot of people who stalls in their career is they don't understand time and place. So yes, I am confident. Yes, I am outspoken, but I know when and how to be, right? If I have something very controversial, I'll probably say it in private to my boss. I won't humiliate him in front of anybody, right? Or do anything that makes him feel insecure. I have done it by accident and I had to go and apologize after, right? Because I get wrapped up in whatever it is that I'm doing. And I apologize publicly about it too, right? And so you do have to know that you build that trust. You first have to have trust with people. So if I were to give you an advice, build trusting relationships.
Build trusting relationships. I think I just did a video about coaches and players. Like if you want to get on the field early, build trust first. Because like as a coach, like you can do all these different things. You can make plays, but if you're not making the play the way they told you to make the play first, it doesn't really matter. Because now I don't, like you made the play the first time. I don't trust you. Like you did that on your own. Now I don't even know if I can tell you what to do anymore.
Yes.
So it's like that dichotomy is extremely important and detrimental if you don't understand the level of EQ and when to speak up, when not to speak up, and when to elevate, when to poke a hole at something. I think those are all very interesting pieces and that accelerate and stall careers all the time.
Without a doubt. Brené Brown talks about trust, like thinking of a marble jar. Like you have to put enough marbles, and then if you do messed up something, it's only one, right? It's not empty. But if you start with an empty, then, right, if I messed up, I have nothing for you to like go back to me, right? Like when I messed up with my boss, we have enough trust that I can go and say like, sorry, that was not right, right?
And when you know that you have that trust, you probably operate at a higher level as well. Because like I think people understand when someone doesn't trust them or a leader doesn't trust them, and it's like walking on eggshells and I can't really do my best, and even having to push through that and sometimes making bosses uncomfortable. I mean, you see it a lot in football because football coaches a lot of times are, you know, very hard on things and blah, 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 blah. And you see people that the talent acquisition process is all up to them saying, hey, I got a guy that can fit this role. So then you start seeing people that work in the industry just wanting to be liked by the person that's at the top and not really providing the right value to get that next job or get that other opportunity, or even understanding why that coach isn't putting their neck out on the line for you. Because like, yeah, you're doing all this stuff for him, but he doesn't really see you as like anything above that, right? Like, and so they won't put themselves out and say that you're above that.
That's correct.
Like, it gets tricky. No,
yes, it does. But that's the beauty of it, you know?
Oh,
it's a journey. It's a journey.
It's a journey. It's a journey. You got to commit to it.
Yes.
I mean, you're saying this is like great stuff for everybody transitioning or even wanting to work in the sports industry. I mean, this is, and just going through the recruiting process because all these things are can translate. So is there any prime trait that you're looking for when adding team members to the Pirates team?
I like people who are owners. Just be an owner. We don't need victims. In this industry, you can be a victim. You just can't. You have to be an owner. You have to take full ownership. You have to understand that you're in full control of your life, of your emotions, of your decisions. And oftentimes, because listen, we play a ton of games, right? There is a grind every day. So there is another level of emotional and mental resiliency that has to be at play. And if you're a victim and you think everything is happening and, everything happens to me, poor me, I don't know, this is not going to work. It just doesn't work.
That's a good one. I like that. That's like very insightful. I mean, full ownership. It is because it produces those type of things that you said, right? Where it's like, all right, I'm not just an assistant running to get a report. Like, no, I got to get this report. Like full ownership. If I was presenting a report for myself, what would I do? Like, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna give the insights. I'm gonna take that next step, and like you said, it has to be authentic for you to even go that far into it.
And you have to, because there is so many ups and downs. Like we're very focused. One of our strategic priorities, of course, is building a winning team. We have to have a winning team, right? But that's a long-term play. We have to, it will take time. And so if we were not owners, it's easy for us to say, well, until we have a good team, we're not going to worry about anything else. That's the wrong thing. Like we have to own our spaces and continue to drive towards that excellence in every aspect, right? And I think you said it perfectly. It's on and off the field. It's both.
100%. Like it's sometimes off the field even more so because you can't just out effort or just have a better talent than someone else. It's like really like the blocks being put in place, being able to work with different personalities, backgrounds, and really care about the on the field product and come to the conclusion. I mean, coming from personnel, dealing with coaches. I mean, how many times I've argued about a teenager to a coach and from standpoint like he's not good enough, right? Like, but you just gotta.
Yes.
We're trying to get to the same thing, so just gotta understand how we get there.
Yes, for sure. I love it.
Yeah. So not the last one close to the last thing, but baseball identification, talent identification process starts so young, right? You see guys, whether from the Dominican Republic, whatever, just coming and getting this type of attention. How do you identify key professionals that can help your team excel in baseball, like that are younger in the talent pipeline? Like, oh, there's a kid that's graduating from Duquesne that may be great to work here. Like, how do you guys go about identifying talent within the pipeline?
Yeah, so I think, well, one thing for baseball and players, it's like a completely different animal, right?
100%.
For us, from a talent acquisition perspective, so we do spend a ton of time recruiting, going to fairs, just trying to get to see where are the people that have interest on, being in sports, and even understanding what are the opportunities, because a lot of people doesn't understand all of these jobs that are in the front office, right? That we have, that are entry-level positions. We have a lot of coordinator levels. We have a lot of good internships. I always tell people, like, try to get at least your resume, because once you send that, we have you in our system, right? We do on a specific event every year. It's called the Kurt Roberts event, and it's a diversity event. So what we do is that we have diverse candidates come in, and then 5 people actually gains an internship through that process. Oh, wow. And so that's one that if you can keep your eye out for, that's a very good way to get in here and get to know people. I will tell you this story. So we did Kurt Roberts last year, and we did a little competition, and then 5 people won the internship. And there was another table that was there, and there was this young African-American man who was very impressive. Like, he presented, he was really good, but they didn't win. And so, but I had my eye out on him, right? And then fast forward like 6 months later, we did a career and a sports day here at the Pirates, and people just came to a game. Like, if you bought the ticket to a game, you got into this panel, and there were like all these presenters and all different people. And he was there. And so I approached him and I said, you know what? This is the second time I've seen you here. Would you like an internship for this summer? And I gave him an internship because he showed up. Just show up. Reach out to people, ask for what you want, right? Nobody's out there advocating for you. You have to advocate for yourself. And so I'm always having an eye out. My team is having an eye out. I'm always looking. I try, right? I try to go to different events, but there is so much that we can do. I can't see you if you don't show me who you are. So you also have to remember how I talked about ownership? That is ownership. I'm going to show up. I'm going to try, and let's say that, because I'm very cognizant of this. Maybe you can afford it. Like some of our stuff are free, of course, right? But let's say you couldn't. Just message me on LinkedIn. Send me a little message and say, hey, listen, I'm really passionate about sports and these are things that I love. And then maybe, I had somebody who'd reach out to me and said, I came to a game and I saw all these things that I think you could do better. And here are some ideas. And I love it. Guess what? When I need somebody in a strategy, I'm hiring that person.
That's right on point. That's great tactical information that people can input now and just when they're going out and doing the different things. Because I remember just getting into that aspect of the proactive talent acquisition when I was at the XFL, just going around in different areas. And it's like, oh, keep a track of that person, keep track of this person, just the sourcing aspect of talent. And outside of your frame of sending out the job description and seeing what resumes come in, but actually being proactive and going out there and finding different people that can operate in that space. So, and Nayli talked about where you can find her in this whole space, but you can check her out on LinkedIn and make sure that you guys follow her blog that is called Cultivate Confidence. And that is on LinkedIn and all those good things. And you can find her there. And we just like to leave you guys with one thing, man. There's no passion to be found playing small and settling for a life that is less than one that you are capable of living. That's from Nelson Mandela. That's one of our favorite quotes. And that's what we're trying to do here. Make sure that you're not playing small, man. We're just playing large because it's to your credit to be able to do that. Thank you so much, Nayli, for jumping on. And this was like amazing. I said the best place to find you is on LinkedIn.
Yes, you can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram. I have a website. I'll send you the link to the self-confidence work. And so, can also follow my blog, whichever you want. I'm here. So.
I gave the plug and a little bit of this stuff to Cultivate Confidence. Make sure you check that out and all that good stuff. I subscribe to it. It's very good. And again, control that confidence, understand and have the EQ to go along with it and the competence when you're going to these different positions and having value that you're provided. So again, this is us from LIG Sports Group. And if you guys need anything, Blue Chip Academy is here for the branding in the NIL recruiting era and Blueprint to Success program. So you guys understand, have the tactical leverage and crafting your leverage while you're going through this elite sports ecosystem and making sure that you're using sports to a career that you can bank on.
I love it.
So thank you so much, Nayli. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.